Greetings, fellow old man Logans. Tiki here,
And BlueDragonFive.
and welcome to the Main Street Cinema, the show where we discuss the finer points of filmmaking. And Dragon, we are here to do our spoiler-free first impressions of Logan. Dragon, I don't know this movie, man. I'd say it's fair to say this might be perhaps the most critically acclaimed superhero movie since The Dark Knight.
Well, yeah, well, that's going around. Might be the one to be actually nominated for Best Picture for Dark Knight. Of course, got it for supporting actor.
Or we'll get right into it, Dragon. So we're gonna start with expectations and then first impressions, of course. Dragon, what were your expectations walking into this thing?
Well, my expectations going in. Well, you got to remember this Old Man Logan is a big Wolverine story people and especially Hugh Jackman have been waiting for. And basically, it's always been Hugh Jackman's kind of send off piece because yeah, it's kind of like when you age, as actors do, as anyone does. When you age, you always want like a good send off. You want to leave on a high note. I don't know if he intended to leave on a high note from the very beginning, but at the very least, there was always kind of a fail safe story of like, well, if I get old and I want to kind of call it quits, I've always got awesome
Right,
story, Old
right.
Man Logan, which not only is a good story, but be something kind of coalesce with real life. So the point is, everyone's been expecting this story. And it's not only a good story; it's always something that would like naturally happen. So it's always been in the air. And through we've seen the trailers and everything, it's kind of it was kind of marketed very true to the book in that it's an indie road trip movie about Wolverine. And the way it's kind of portrayed in the film here, as well as it was in the book, is that it's kind of Logan's Dark Knight Returns, kind of Dark Knight Returns style, reflecting on how far he's come. And while it's not like fine like 100% like faithful, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in. My point is going into it, I was expecting kind of at least something close to the book, even though I knew it wasn't going to be 100% like the book, because again, they had a lot of Marvel in the book.
Of
Old
course.
news. So again, what I'm hearing like as the things coming closer and closer, like it's I believe critics can watch it 2 weeks in advance. A lot of Oscar buzz, a lot of hype, of course, with us. A lot of hype with the Johnny Cash and the convenience store trailers. Those two trailers in particular. Uh, the kind of big thing, kind of when this film was in talks, because again, we kind of knew this. It was kind of we didn't know what it was going to be called for the longest time, but people speculated just Old Man Logan. It's going to be called Weapon X. We didn't know. So then, of course, we get Logan. And then basically, Deadpool kind of cracked the door. I like to use this analogy. Deadpool cracked the door open. They didn't open the door because this thing is coming whether we didn't. This thing was coming regardless, but it came. It came the way it did. I want to say not fully because of Deadpool, because Hugh Jackman did take a pay cut to get it R rated, which much kind of not Ryan Reynolds, but kind of everyone in general kind of did for the Deadpool. They all had it was lower budget, lower everything to get Deadpool made. So Hugh Jackman took a pay cut to get this film made the way it needed to be made, to set it apart from the rest, because this film feels very distinctly different from any of the other X-Men films you've seen.
Oh yeah.
So going into it, I was hyped, and they've done a really good job in kind of marketing as tonally as it does appear to be. So again, expectations were high. I was going into it again in the getting ready to go in the theater. Like the theater I had gone to build this, I'll get into this more in the reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Going into it, the theater I've been going to has been renovated, so now it's all nice and fancy. And Dolby apparently, I don't know if it was specifically for this film or not, or just for the theater or whatever, but the theater was like Dolby, which essentially is kind of another IMAX, sort of IMAX theater. It was real fancy. The chairs are nice, like these black kind of walls. Basically, there's no chance like you putting your feet on someone else's chair because it's like really fancy, really nice. And like the coolest thing in the experience is like the theater is super renovated, super like surround sound. So basically, you feel every kill in the movie, so to speak. It's like the whole thing shakes in the sound. It's like, oh, it's really cool.
I know exactly what you're talking about. My theater has it as well. It's called Dolby Atmos.
Yes, I think that's what it's called. I think it's. So I had that experience for the first time watching this film. It was amazing.
Nice.
So
it's a good film to have that first time experience with.
Now I'll get into that a little bit more when we get in the reaction. Let's just say again, expectations were as high as they could be for Logan.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have as eloquent of a story about expectations, Dragon. I'm sorry. It's just for me. I know this was definitely a question mark of a movie for a long time for me. Like even as the hype started to build, Mostly because, it's like with the standalone Wolverine movies. I mean, we've talked about this off air, but I still haven't gotten around to seeing the Wolverine. I probably will never sit down and watch X-Men Origins, and I think I think my life is just fine without ever having watched X-Men Origins Wolverine. But with the Wolverine Dragon, like I said to you off air, it's like the one thing that kind of keeps me away from watching that movie is that every critic I've heard talk about that movie says that it falls apart in the third act. And you've given me valid explanations, and I'm sure I'll sit down and watch it eventually, especially in the wake of something like this, and it's done by the same director and everything. But
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you I want to blow your mind with the fact that James Mangold.
Yeah.
So again, as I neglected to mention, guys, I like the Wolverine. James Mangold did the Wolverine. He's done some other great films with Hugh Jackman, of course, the Kate and Leopold, and I want to say his first big break. I looked it up today. I didn't know about this until when I was getting ready for us to go on here. James Mangold, he went to Cal Arts, so he was one of the, and he wrote Oliver and Company.
Oh God!
It was that was his first. That was kind of the first credit, one of the first credits to his name. Again, probably getting out of Cal Arts. He wrote, or he was probably, I want to say maybe this was storyboarding. I'm as a guess, but at least he was involved in the writing process on that.
Well, you got to start somewhere.
On Oliver and Company, and look how far he's come.
Oh man. Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. Keep going. Just so
yeah. But then, of course, Dragon, especially like after the reviews. I mean, this thing, just the couple of weeks leading up to it, it was just like Oscar hype, Oscar hype, Oscar hype. I mean, maybe everyone's just buzzed about the Oscars. We have the craziest event in Oscar history, which happened just last week. But yeah. Dragon, I was hyped for it, but I kind of had a little bit of a reservation about it just because, like, well, I don't know if there's going to be any sort of, like, character development that I missed by not seeing the Wolverine. I mean, I'm sure there's probably a couple callbacks here and there that I missed. I could have
sworn I told you, like, each film's kind of set in a different continuity, so it's still you're fine.
Right. You probably have told me that before. And also just the whole idea of like, well, this is an X-Men movie, but there's not going to be a whole lot of actual X-Men in it. I mean, granted, we saw that a little bit with Deadpool, but Deadpool still had a lot of fun callbacks to the in-universe X-Men stuff. And, no, but overall, Dragon, like I said, expectations were really high going in. And I just want to talk about my reaction going out. So you want me to go first, Dragon? Should you go first? How you want to do this?
Well, would you like to go first?
I'm pulling a Poe Dameron here. Do you talk first? Do I talk first? How do you do this thing? I'll go first.
All right,
okay. So, Dragon, my first reaction upon the movie ending, right? Upon the movie ending.
Again, no spoilers for the folks.
No spoilers.
I want to reemphasize, and we do not want to spoil this thing.
No. But my first reaction upon the movie ending was, oh my God, that did not feel like 2 hours and 20 minutes.
How long did it feel to you?
It literally felt like maybe a little bit under, like if I'm being accurate here, it felt like it was like a little bit under 2 hours.
Honestly, I just kind of lost all sense of time when I was watching it.
That's what and so when the credits started rolling, I was like, without any spoilers, it ends on a really cool shot. All right, that's all I'm gonna say. It ends on a really cool shot.
I am in full 1,000% agreement with you on that.
Without any spoilers,
I'm gonna get into that so much when we talk about spoilers.
And so, and so I was like, oh, that's a really cool shot. So where are they gonna go next with it? It's like, what's gonna happen now? And then the credits rolled, and I was like, oh, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense for an ending. That's a great ending. But, oh, man, I was not prepared for it to end, Dragon. This film is excellent. It's one of the best superhero movies ever made. It barely even feels like a superhero movie. God. Hugh Jackman, give him the Oscar, man.
Yes.
Give it.
Give him an Oscar with claws.
I'm serious, though. If he's not at least, I mean, of course, we don't know. I really wish this movie would have come out in November, Dragon.
Yeah, it would have been, because
that's the one thing. That's the one thing. It's like, I would have totally, I would be happy to wait another 6 or so months for this movie to come out if it would have gotten, like, because as of now, I think it's unfortunate, Dragon, but I think, like, calling it right now, I don't think it's going to get many Oscar, maybe like sound or visual effects or something
Tiki,
like that.
I don't think it's good enough. I think this thing's definitely going to be nominated for the Oscars, and I think it's definitely going to be nominated for actor and best picture.
I'm
calling that right now. I'm calling these three. These are the three. I'm betting you. I'll bet dollars on right now to get nominations for actor, a director, and best picture. Those are the three. I'm convinced those three are going to be up for the nominations.
I don't know. I think you're a little bit more optimistic about that than I am, but I'm just saying that just because March movies typically don't do well when it comes to Academy Awards. Just traditionally, March movies, it doesn't matter how good the movie is. It doesn't matter how critically acclaimed the movie is. March movies don't do well with Oscar voters. I'm saying, like, basically any movie outside of, like, starting at, like, the summer season. I don't know. This is
none of those were Hugh Jackman's last time playing Wolverine, though.
That's true. And what a great movie this is, Dragon. It's I was blown away by the aesthetic of it, by just the just how God. It's funny, Dragon, because it's like it totally didn't feel like 2 hours and 20 minutes. And yet at the same time, it moved along at such a deliberately slow pace that I really liked. You know what I mean? It does kind of have that sort of slow build to it. So I was engaged in it the whole time, but it is not a super fast-paced movie. This isn't like X-Men Days of Future Past, where things are happening and, characters are popping in left and right and we're jumping back. No, this is a very, very slow, very somber character piece. And that's a key word here, Dragon. It's a character piece. And I love it about this movie. And Dragon, I think this is a better movie than Dark Knight, hands down. Hands down. For me, it's not even a question.
That's a really tough question for me. I mean, they're both different, though. I mean, they're both excellent, but I think they're two.
I just think Dark Knight, like, there is some stuff in that first act of Dark Knight that I think is a little too overly convoluted. There's some screenplay elements with the Dark Knight that I'm not a big fan of. Whereas with this movie, it's just like, for me, this movie is more or less a perfect superhero movie, more or less. Whereas Dark Knight, very superior product, had a couple flaws here and there that kept it from like a 10 out of 10 for me. And this is definitely a 10 out of 10 for me. So, okay. But anyways, Dragon, enough. Go ahead and give me your first reactions then.
Okay, here's my reaction.
Yep.
And I guess the experience. So I was very moved and very satisfied, especially the ending. The ending, again, I was like, I won't get into it. I won't say what it was. I'm just saying like that. The ending, like it kept hitting beat after beat after beat of like, oh God, it's getting awesome. Like I'm saying, oh my God, that's yes, it's hitting all the right. I'm trying to find the words not to say it without saying the words. It's like, oh boy, it's like it's hitting all the right notes, and just the last shot, as we've kind of been hyping up, just the last shot just kind of says it all, and it's like that's the one that like that's kind of the Toy Story 3 sort of like Buzz Lightyear kind of having.
Oh, absolutely.
See, it's always it's like you're always emotionally caught up, and there's like that moment kind of sends gives you the tingles around your spine. And for me, it was in Toy Story 3 is like when Andy's pushing the Buzz Lightyear to the rescue, and then when he pushes that button, and that's kind of the moment. That's kind of the feeling I got when I was watching the end. I didn't quite break up as much like at the end of Winter Soldier, but it's like, oh God, I felt it so much. Like I felt it wrapped around my spine, like, oh God, it's so moving. That's perfect. Anyway, and all of this was boosted by, as I mentioned, I saw it in this Dolby Atmos. That's what it's called.
Dolby Atmos, yes.
So yeah, Dolby Atmos is a wonderful experience. And you basically had to pay extra money for Dolby Atmos. Because again, I was really kind of bugged me because I had no idea what it was going to be like. Because again, there's a new thing at the theater. So
I don't know why, but my theater for some reason doesn't charge extra for it. I feel lucky now.
Well, I'm saying it's like a few bucks on the Thursday night screening. So I don't know if that's the reason. I have no idea. The point is, again, it was like kind of unclear because again they're kind of doing things differently now, and they've renovated. So I don't know how much that is a renovation. It's going to be a regular thing. It's not going to be a regular thing. But at the time, I didn't know. So again, it's gonna be like, is this even going to be worth it? Is price gouging? Who knows? And let's just say, without getting into it, my experience of the film, the first 30 minutes earned the extra money right off the bat.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Let me just first and foremost say that's what the first 3 minutes was. The first 3 minutes is like, okay, the money I paid, by all means, okay, just take it. You've earned it. Honestly, I'm going to be completely honest. The two things that kind of sold me. Again, honestly, the first 3 minutes, believe it, I want to see a movie, by all means. But again, honestly, first 3 minutes, I could have walked out. I still would have been pretty happy.
Okay.
But in all seriousness, though, the opening scene to Logan, I think, says it all. I think it's such an artfully, wonderfully done thing. The music's perfect. That opening scene, where we kind of meet up with Logan in the States, and it's like that to me is like a really wonderful character, because that's what you want to open your film with, to show you, like, where we check in with Wolverine, where we see he's with Logan, and we see he's in really bad shape, and it's set all visually, and it's like it's so well directed. Again, that's such like an Oscar opening scene right there, and that's the perfect note to kind of hook you for the movie. Again, that to me, again, aside from I'm partially jokingly saying the first 3 minutes I could have walked out, but however, like, okay, I gotta see what happens next. Like, that's the most amazing hookup for a movie you opened with.
Absolutely.
And just going past that, about getting into the movie, just in general. Like, so again, James Mangold, as I said, again, the Wolverine, we've seen elements of what James Mangold does with the Wolverine character, and in that you kind of notice what James Mangold's strengths is, even if you look at his other things he's directed. Again, like Kate and Leopold, I believe the first thing he's done with Hugh Jackman. So this is kind of true through that and the Wolverine in this movie. Two elements. One, James Mangold is very good at character pieces, and with character pieces, also that includes like pairing up characters. Like in the Wolverine, it's Wolverine and Mariko. Like those two characters are primarily through that film. And Kate and Leopold, of course, Kate and Leopold. So he's really good at kind of pairing characters, but also focusing on your one central character, which this is all over this film, hence the title. But it's Logan, X-23, and Charles Xavier. Again, the three of those, the crux of this film, their dynamic is very, very strong, very, very good. Against excellent character piece. The other thing James Mangold's really good at is making a good story before an adaptation, which we got a glimpse at. The Wolverine. We got a glimpse at with the Wolverine, but that was just basically modernizing the original story. And here it was a lot more original. So again, as I kind of said a little bit in the expectations, we knew going into it wasn't going to be Old Man Logan 100%, but at the same time, this is not really Old Man Logan, but it tonally embodies the themes of the story, which is what you want to do. So again, a lot of times we'll say with like directors like Zack Snyder, Watchmen, of course, it's like, again, he's good at adapting things, telling an original story, not so much. And Mangold's kind of the bizarro Snyder, but again, he's all good though.
Sure.
Again, it's like, he's telling a story before he's worrying about adapting anything, which is what you want to do. He has a take in mind, which again I think was really a good omen going forward. Just James Mangold working on these films with Hugh Jackman. Not only does he have rapport with the guy, but he's also really he's a filmmaker first before he's like kind of like let's worry about like what the studio wants from this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, again, bodies the themes of the story. It's like the themes that this really buys from the book. They're more vague, they're more broad, which allows you to do so much more with it. The big questions are raised with old age, nearing the end of the road, what it brings about. Kind of what basically you're looking with a lot of introspection. It's kind of the main word I would say with this film. It's a lot of introspection in a really a clever way. It's like Logan living with things. It's like living with the things you've done and questioning what's next for you at this stage in your life. And last thing I'll say is the X-23, of course, still the show.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so let's get into pros and cons then. I imagine there's. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Real quick, plot. So it's 2029. Officially 6. If it's after Days of Future Past, it's 6 years after Days of Future Past.
I'd like to think it's after Days of Future Past just to soothe my OCD.
Yeah, me too. I'm just saying some people are bringing up a theory that it's a valid theory that maybe in the timeline there's no Days of Future Past. Regardless, it's 6 years. Days of Future Past is in 2023, so 6 years. So approximately 6 years after quote unquote Days of Future Past, if it counts. Mutants essentially are extinct and no longer born. Because they're no longer born, that's why they're kind of extinct. And also the X-Men are dead, except for Logan and Xavier, the last surviving X-Men. This group, I want to say it's called Transgen. Does that sound right to you?
I guess. Yeah, that sounds right.
I'm going to hope that's right. Transgen, the Transgen Corporation, they are creating mutant clones by cloning DNA, which of course gives us X-23. So basically, they're kind of test tube babies essentially, and their fathers are mutant DNA.
Mhm.
And I'm also gonna hit upon this in the pros and cons a little bit. The Xander Rice is sending Reavers. Reavers are kind of our cyborg, I guess, kind of bounty hunter guys who are going after. Basically, this guy who runs corporations, Xander Rice, sends Reavers led by Donald Pierce. Donald Pierce is the main blonde head guy with the robot on hand that we see in all trailers and everything, to recapture X-23. Logan and Xavier embark on a dangerous mission to get her to a safe haven in North Dakota called Eden. It's a journey filled with murder, action, and introspection, building to a very memorable climax. And that's the film in a nutshell.
All right, so pros and probably some very, very, very minimal cons.
Yeah, very minimal. Yeah.
Okay,
So of course, it's a very human story, which is excellent.
Yeah, I just before we go any further, we haven't praised Patrick Stewart yet, and this might be the best performance I've ever freaking seen from Patrick Stewart in anything.
He gets to play a really unconventional Xavier because he's got a lot of things going on, and this time we kind of do going into it. He has Alzheimer's, he has kind of a lot of issues going on.
Mm-hmm.
Which I will say, without getting into the specifics, with the Dolby thing, one of the best things to say about the Dolbys, there's a sequence in the movie where, let's say, Xavier's power is kind of
I know what you're talking about.
And that's where the Dolby thing really paid off to the movie.
Right.
See, I was always sold on the Dolby thing because again, it was like, oh wow, this is amazing experience. I was like, yes, I see why they're doing it. Basically, you feel like you're in that scene.
Yeah, exactly.
So, perfect. It was perfect first experience for a Dolby thing for me, I guess. I don't know. I think this movie is really good for stuff like that. Anyways, boys, again, Xavier's not really in control of his powers like he once was. He has Alzheimer's. He's like kind of at the end. He's still hopeful as always with Xavier. Like he's really nice with X-23, but at the same time, he's still really he'll drop some F-bombs and stuff. Which a lot of people are kind of processing. Me, I'm used to Patrick Stewart cursing up a storm from some of the things I've seen him
in. This is just like you said, it's just Professor X, unlike you've ever seen him. I mean, this is just like a radically different Charles Xavier than we saw in the first X-Men movie.
Yeah.
But like you said, it does maintain a lot of the same qualities of Charles Xavier. It does very much have that hopeful kind of tone to him. So yeah,
you gotta remember, this is Charles Xavier without his students. Again, he's lost everything.
Exactly. All right. Oh man. The whole thing just feels like an independent movie, man, in the best way, the best freaking way. It's just like take out some of the sci-fi stuff, take out some of the mutant stuff, just don't pay attention to that. And it's essentially just like an indie drama about the fears of aging and dying. You know what I mean?
It's so funny. I mean, you're right about that, but it's so funny that while Marvel's still kind of ruling the earth right now, and they're blowing tons of money, but again, strategically blowing tons of money. It's so funny that, again, the last two X-Men, not counting Apocalypse. But
let's not count Apocalypse.
Two of the point is two really kind of separated from the X universe, Deadpool and Wolverine. These two films again made for a far less budget. Of course, have been very successful, very good. And it just seems like DC, take some notes, guys, buddies. I'm trying to help you out here, guys. You got to just cut down the budget, focus on characters. What you got to do.
Sure, totally. I agree with that. We
don't need CG. We don't need CG Doomsday. Just
let's
cut down.
I mean, I would even say Marvel Studios would be wise to take notes about these smaller scale stories. You know what I mean?
It'd be kind of great if they could just infuse a little more money into the TV shows, which again are basically that. If you ever want to see Marvel on low budget, it's the TV shows. Which again, I don't want to just make that sound negative. I'm just saying, again, they very minimally use CG on Agents of Shield and stuff. I'm just saying, in general, for the Netflix stuff, and
that extends to the Netflix.
See, the Netflix stuff, much like Deadpool and Wolverine. Here again, they're on a lower budget, much more kind of restrained budget, and again, it's devoting more time to character, and that's kind of something to explore. Yeah.
But yeah, just so without giving anything away, I think they use the X-Men mythology very well. They use of course, we saw the comic books in the trailer. So
yes, we can talk about that to an extent. Let's say there are great comic references in this idea.
Let me just say, the comic book is not just a cheap throwaway gag. It is
a plot specific thing,
which I think works really well.
And I might have to get to in cons for one small minor thing, but it's very minor. The point is that the X-Men comic idea is really brilliant, especially what it kind of says about the movie as a whole, which I get to more in final thoughts. Let's just say I think it's really it was such a brilliant move because one, that's a way of us seeing Wolverine in the costume after all these movies.
Of course, yeah, right. Of course, just give Hugh Jackman the Oscar right now. I know the Oscars for the 2016 movies happened a week ago, but just do it.
Say like, oh yeah, we read it wrong again. Here's Hugh Jackman's
Oh
Oscar.
God! Curses Warren Beatty.
Yeah.
Oh God, I don't even know who announced the best. The best actor Oscar would have gone to the best actress winner from last year, and that would be I don't even remember.
Well, that's helpful. Okay, so speaking of this kind of the restrained budget, we still even with the kind of restrained budget, we do get a lot of excellent locations and distinct kind of road trip. Yeah. Let me rephrase. Very distinct road trip esque locations.
Mm-hmm, totally. Without giving anything away, the location that Professor X is in the first time we see him is a freaking fantastic set piece and visual. That's all I'll say about it.
I love our last location thematically how it works. It's something that we see Wolverine in all the movies, and they're doing a fun callback with it. Let's say the location of the third act.
So, folks, you can tell we're being trying to be very vague about the spoilers because this is just an awesome experience, and this is definitely one of those movies where. I think with the Lego Batman movie or something like that, if you know some of the gags that are going to happen it's not going to ruin the experience for you. It's like you want to be as vague as possible walking in.
There's stuff we could spoil the wazoo
out of. Oh yeah.
So of course the violence and we have copious and accurate violence importantly I like violence with a purpose. It's violence that accentuates and reminds us what life. What Logan's life has been filled with. So again, that's why it's kind of a twofer ticket. It's one, it's kind of a meta thing of hey, we're compensating for all the times we couldn't get Wolverine to kill someone brutally.
Exactly.
we're doing it extra here. Which I don't know, he still killed people, mainly in X2. In X2 he got to kill people, minus all the blood. X-Men Apocalypse is the first time we got to see kind of a version of this. We got to see it. We're closer and closer to this. Okay, well, we actually got this. Again, I love this. That basically these last three films, Apocalypse, Deadpool, and this, have all basically rewritten and made X-Men Origins Wolverine a lot better. Right. Basically, we redo X-Men Origins in 5 minutes in X-Men Apocalypse, which I appreciated. And of course, we fixed Deadpool completely with his movie. And here again, we're kind of. Without giving it away, let's just say they find a way to still reference all three Wolverine movies and kind of take the elements from them and even some unpopular elements and make them work.
Mm-hmm.
Bear in mind, you won't find Deadpool with a mouth sewn shut in this film at all. But it's
thank God.
But still, again, I appreciate how they they retroactively made some stuff work, and they didn't have to do that, but they found a way to make it work and actually make it count, kind of make it homage to some other movies, but they don't want to give it away.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of the tactic they used for Rogue One with some of filling in some of the original trilogy plot holes.
Oh, yes. That makes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I love the score. The score's really good and emotional. Again, that opening scene, too, was that piano music. I love the piano score. Dun, dun, dun,
I said, Ray, this has literally all the trappings of an Oscar movie. It's got a really touching score. It's got excellent performances. It's got very vivid cinematography and production design.
Yeah. Real quick, just again with the violence. So again, with the violence, again, it's kind of not only is it kind of a meta thing of overcompensating for what we didn't see before, but again, it's a perfect reminder. So even if you haven't seen the other films, you get kind of a reminder of oh my God, this is what the guy's life must. You can come into this movie fresh, pretty much, and I think you'd still be okay, right?
Well, I mean, I'm a testament to that, yes, because now I'm questioning if you came into it fresh. The one thing I'll question with that, Dragon, and I was actually asked this by someone else about how fresh you need to go into it. I would recommend still if you haven't seen X-Men 1 and 2, watching those before you walk into it, because it's important to get kind of a grasp on the Logan and Professor X dynamic and how that's evolved over time. But other than that, yeah, I mean, definitely like it stands apart from the two Wolverine movies well because I didn't feel like I missed a beat.
Hmm. Yeah. No, you're right about that. Yes. Honestly, I would say X-Men 1, 2, and Future Past. Because Future Past is also that one really shows like how far these two have come. Like the two of them at like see how intertwined kind of Wolverine and Professor X are in the past and the present.
Yeah.
And basically, you see like how kind of close and kind of meaningful the relationship is in that one. Then, of course, we see heroes like completely, kind of really, it's like kind of such like a father-son dynamic here, where it's like kind of like a twisted thing too. Of like Logan, it's so fun. Here's without getting into what it is, Logan and Logan in a fun, cruel twist here. In the very beginning, Logan did not have information, and of course, Professor X did. He could go into his mind, he helped him repair his memories. Which, by the way, in this film, Logan has all of his memories back.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Fun little note, because now he uses his actual name, which is James Howard. So that's the closest thing to a spoiler you'll get from me. So again, which again is kind of a tie to X-Men Origins Wolverine, which they didn't have to put that in there, but hey, okay, they're showing that not only does Logan have, we knew in the Wolverine, let's say, a lot of people are kind of lost in this. I don't know why, but he has a lot more memories of the wars and stuff he's been in that we see in that opening from X-Men Origins. The point is, he's been regaining his memories over time. And we actually kind of hit upon it. So now we can assume he knows everything from the very beginning because he knows his name. Or at least he knows a lot more than he used to know.
Mm-hmm.
So what was I? Oh yeah, but the fun twist is that again in the very beginning, of course, is Professor X telling Logan stuff, and Logan being short of information. Now Logan knows something very important that he is hiding from Xavier, and it's a really crushing thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So again, it's kind of a fun twist of now Logan's taking care of Xavier, and he's also he's the one who knows more, and now Xavier has that diminished capacity. So it's like, oh, poor. It's such a now he's the broken shell that he's fixing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just not. Yeah, I'm not really saying much because I can't really go anything beyond what you've said without going into spoilers. But yeah, I agree.
So let me mention this. So again, of course, the great quality is it goes away from the comic and finds a way to make it work as a standalone film that is still they're still able to. Basically, we're able to do a standalone film here that even if you took it out of the continuity, I'm just talking in terms of continuity. If you took it out of continuity, it could be like it's a last Wolverine story, a last X-Men story. It could be it could be either a last or what we've been building to for the last. So again, you could connect it or basically hit such a sweet spot of like it can have its cake and eat it too.
Well, I'm gonna I know these are two completely different movies, but let's compare this to something like Civil War. I guess the one big comparison between this and Civil War is that it's a famous comic arc that, it adapts the themes very well without actually adapting the story all that much.
Because again, you need like other, Marvel to do Civil War.
But I think the difference between this and Civil War is that this is definitely I'm not saying this is a knock on Civil War at all, okay? But this is definitely it's totally a send-off. You know what I mean? It's totally like a last hurrah sort of movie.
Yeah, whereas, again, his Dark Knight Returns.
Whereas Civil War is definitely the culmination of everything that we've built up in the MCU so far. It's basically okay, here's everything that came before, and going forward is going to be like a whole new game after this. And I think what Civil War does, like I said, I've said this before on my rankings and everything like that, but I just can't picture you walking into Civil War having never watched any of the MCU movies. And I mean, you can enjoy it on a base level. Certainly, it's got a lot of fun action, fun dialogue. The characters are very.
They recap the essentials. They recap the essentials what you need in the moment for you get a sense of what the deal with Bucky is.
But I mean, I can't imagine that you would enjoy that movie as much if you weren't a big fan of the MCU already. Whereas with Logan, I'm not that big of an X-Men fan in general. My favorite movie, it's like Days of Future Past is the only really great X-Men movie I think there is outside of maybe X2. And of course Deadpool notwithstanding, of course.
Yeah, of course, Deadpool would be at the top of it.
Of course. But, I'm not the biggest X-Men fan. I'm certainly not the biggest Wolverine fan. I'm one of those people that thinks that Wolverine is kind of, unfairly overshadowed a lot of characters over the years. But having said that, me not seeing the James Mangold Wolverine before this, I can say this film is just a true work of art. Even and I don't know, Dragon. That's the difference. You know, I think Captain America: Civil War is just it's a work of art when it's basically like a Warhol versus a Picasso or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Civil War is totally the Warhol. Civil War is totally like the pop culture art, whereas this is a thing that you really have to stare at. You really have to analyze and just digest.
Yeah. Exactly. It's kind of what you're saying with Civil War is that this kind of did one thing Civil War can't do as well. Let's say again, it's like still an argument could be made, not easily. An argument could be made that Civil War does this too, but again, mainly Logan hit his spot where it can still connect everything, certain things that's been built, but otherwise it can still stand alone. It's like this could be out of in kind of an Elseworld story in a way, like Old Man Logan is. Old Man Logan is an Elseworld story, but at the same time, if you really wanted to say, okay, let's say years and years from now, this could happen as the last story, the last story.
Right.
Exactly. So let's see. This is something I'm not sure you're aware of this or not, but I'll tell you. So this, I'm going to argue this is not a spoiler because this.
Okay, tread lightly.
Here's the thing. So I already mentioned Xander Price. Xander Rice. Xander Rice is let's just say our white lab coat guy. Let's say that much.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people thought that, of course, it's not exact. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of how to go about this. It's very simple. Again, it's not. I want to make it clear. It's not a spoiler because this is going into a lot of people wondering, as I've been preaching myself. A lot of people wondering if Mr. Sinister was going to be in this one because he was seated at the end of Apocalypse. They were seating Mr. Sinister. That's very true. Brian Singer shot the scene seating in Mr. Sinister. In the future of X-Men, we were to see Mr. Sinister, and the ending of Apocalypse, they was setting up Logan because Logan, the DNA and the stuff that we see in this movie is in that briefcase.
Okay.
So that stuff, the Wolverine's DNA from Weapon X, is in the hands of the Essex Corporation, which is Nathaniel Essex, which is Mr. Sinister. And that was the intention, but then James Mangold shared, or one of the writers shared, I don't know if it was Mangold, might have been someone else, because there were a couple of writers, Mangold being kind of leading the charge, but mentioned that they found Mr. Sinister would have been kind of exaggerating things, so they want to keep a little bit more down to earth a little bit. They basically, Mr. Sinister would be kind of a reach and be kind of more like a cog and they want to make it more standalone, which is understandable. So what they did, so the intention was to use Mr. Sinister and then kind of change it to this guy who was his own character. If anyone wants to look it up again, Xander Rice is a guy who, what he says he is in the movie, he's very accurate to what he is in the film, which I will get in all that. The point is, of course, the person who said they wanted to play Mr. Sinister still can. Bryan Cranston can still play Mr. Sinister, right?
Yep.
Because that was the one thing going to movie. Well, again, if they probably cast him as Mr. Sinister, like in this, because that's why I kept away from spoilers.
Could you imagine if it was actually Bryan Cranston as Mr. Sinister and you had no idea?
That's what I was looking. That was the movie. That was the one question I did go in the movie is that I kept the one spoiler I kept away from was like if Mr. Sinister was in this movie or not. Because again, it was really strongly assumed, but then the last weekend I missed out on this. Someone confirmed no, Mr. Sinister's not in this film. So I didn't know that going into it. So I was kept looking at this guy. Could he be Mr. Sinister? And they give him a different name. I don't think Xander's it would work because it's Essex, not Xander. So then a part of me yay, that means Cranston can still play. Cranston really wants to play Mr. Sinister. And again, I've been preaching this that hey, Deadpool 2, they could have Mr. Sinister as the bad guy.
That's true. That's true. I think Deadpool 2 could, no offense to Francis, no offense, but I think Deadpool 2 could very much use a very menacing villain, you know what I mean? Like a really standout villain. And since we have Deadpool's origin out of the way, which is what Deadpool sort of set up, I'm sorry, I'm going off tangent. Anything else with the positives, man? Because we're kind of...
Okay, my main point with Sinister is that, let me just clarify one thing, Sinister. Again, the reason Sinister could be in Deadpool 2 is because, he connects to the Cable and the whole... Mr. Sinister always going after Cyclops, and Cable is Cyclops' son, so...
Oh, okay. Nice.
Anyway, so the point is we got a lot of really positive ones. If we went into further detail, be going into spoilers, so we're going to try to avoid
exactly.
Let's just move on to the very few cons, and we don't have to be vague about.
Oh man.
Well, these are very few and far between. I got 4 of them. You just.
All right, I'm going to say something really controversial that everyone's going to hate me for.
Remember, be vague.
I'll have to watch the movie again. I wasn't as sold on X-23 as everyone else seems to be, and I know I'm gonna get hate for saying that.
I'm gonna soften the blow a little. I'm gonna say this, all right. I really love X-23, but I will say this. I kind of noticed, especially in the marketing too. This is like in the movie too. Like, everyone's like cheering like as Olga as she keeps killing and killing throughout the film, which is not a spoiler. You know, she keeps killing throughout the film. That basically everyone's like kind of going nuts over. No, wrong. It's cool, but at a point, it's kind of repetitive. Like I'm not repetitive in that it's tiresome, just repetitive. Okay, yeah, we get it. It's cool. We don't need to, like, not a new thing every time she's killing someone.
Let me just say there's a certain directing choice regarding her character that, well, I think it would look really strong on paper, and again, I'm trying to be vague with this. I think the directing choice that they go with her character makes it harder for me to connect to her and Logan having this really super tight bond than I was wanting to. I mean, don't get me wrong, it still came across in the film. It still worked really well. I think maybe if they would have written her character a little differently and maybe had I don't know. What do you think about that? And I hope you know what direction I'm talking about.
I think I'm trying to think if it's that much of a spoiler. Well, are you talking about like kind of how she communicates things?
Yes.
Well, okay. Let me say this. I don't think it's a problem because I want to say she's that way in the comic. It makes sense for her.
I understand it. It makes sense. It's artistic. Like I said, the one problem I had, the one issue that came up with it, like I said, is that through the means of which it happens, I didn't get as much of a connection between her and Hugh Jackman as I was really wanting to. Does that make sense?
I get what you're saying. I disagree though. I think it's still strong. I think it's like still communicated well, and it when it is communicated in a different way, I think it's still
all right.
I
mean, I know I'm in like the vast minority when it comes to this because every single review I've seen is just like, oh my god, X-23 is amazing. So who knows? Maybe on a rewatch, I'll watch again and be like, yes, that directing choice is awesome. How could we have it any other way? You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, she's kind of going through what Logan went through, but as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Sorry, you got more?
Well, I mean, should we address Price? Because I think he works well, but...
Well, yeah, I'm going to a point, I agree with what people are saying about Price. I think it's a shame that Logan and Price don't really have a showdown, but I don't think he's... Right. I still think he's a good character, though. I just think he's kind of... I think
he's fun. I think the actor does a really good job with him. He is servicefully menacing. Like, I don't think he's like a wimp or anything like that, or, I don't get the feeling that he could just be easily taken down.
I think they were building to a fight that never happened, which kind of bugs me.
That's kind of a problem. You're right.
But they do have a satisfying way of like what happens to the prey without getting into it.
Yes, they do.
That's what I'm saying. It's satisfying. At the same time, I just wish along the way this Logan and he had their fight that they've been building to.
Well, it's kind of like the Empire being defeated by Ewoks at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Which, again, yeah, we like Ewoks, but having them kind of do that all by themselves, I mean, again, it's like a good message. Like, hey, we don't need... people can band together and take down the Empire, but still, Ewoks, man, seriously, Ewoks?
But I think these are some badass Ewoks, though.
That's what I'm saying.
That's all I'm saying.
I wouldn't want to... Like, this is an Endor I don't want to go into without...
Exactly.
Being heavily armed.
Okay. Gosh, I'm kind of at a loss for cons, man.
Well, you went through one of my cons, so I guess 3 left if you're
okay,
done.
Go ahead.
Okay, let me start with the most... I guess I should start with the really minor one. I think it's a shame they couldn't get Bub in anywhere. The term Bub, Wolverine's catchphrase, like, hey, Bub.
Oh, right.
To be fair, I don't think Mangold did that in any of his. I don't think he did that in the Wolverine either. I can't remember if he had Bubs in the... I know you haven't seen the Wolverine, that's why it's... But
it could just be a tone thing, is what I'm guessing.
No, I'm just saying, like, if it's like the last Wolverine story, it'd be kind of nice to kind of full circle. He says Bub again, like even if it's like one Bub, like not. I'm saying, it's Wolverine's phrase like the last time. It's a very minor thing. It doesn't kill the movie at all. I'm just saying,
of course.
It's a small missed opportunity. But then again, maybe Mangold tries to avoid it. I don't know. I can't remember if the Mangold.
Like I said, if I were to take a guess, I would just say like it's the same reason. God, is it a spoiler to say who does or does not cameo in this movie?
It's Yeah, let's not talk
Okay,
about that.
fair enough. Fair enough. But let me just
Anyway,
say, like,
it's
you know what I'm talking about. It's probably my guess is the bub thing is probably a similar reason to that.
no, no, I still think it's like it's it's so minor. So like this thing wasn't changed. Not just like him, he could like cutesily say it to someone real quick. I don't think it would have been that much of a tone
All right,
shift.
all right.
It's like one small word, like just hey bub. It's like saying buddy, like hey buddy, what are you doing? Like, hey you. Anyway, okay, let's see. Okay, real quick. I wish Xander was seated or set up a little more because he connects to Weapon X in a way, and it's still a little too vague of like how he connects to Weapon X. Just basically, it's like we never saw this guy in any of the other movies before. We had no idea who this guy was, and that's fine. If they wanted to like say, okay, this guy exists now, that's fine. But you still got to like tell me where he's coming from a little bit when we introduce him, so I kind of get
Yeah,
it. You know,
they could have done a better job of kind of like seeding him in throughout the rest of the movie
because
until
it's
when he
kind of a
eventually
throw.
shows up.
Yeah, it's like a throwaway line he has, and this throwaway line kind of tells us where he came from. It's an important line, but again, it's still a little vague. Of like the like he mentions what he connects to, and we still don't know like what exactly he connects to. It's a little vague. We'll
No,
get into it more.
I
Yeah.
totally agree. That was like one of the few elements of the movie where I was like, okay,
Because
I
it's
get
it's
it, but
kind of
it's just
important,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
because what he says again is contributing to what Logan's going through in this movie, so it's kind of important.
exactly.
Okay, last thing. This is the big essay. Well, again, minor big out of all these are very minor. Bear in mind. Every
Okay.
one of these are like these are things. These are like missed opportunities. Or like all of these are missed opportunities. Let me make that clear. None of these are actual things against the film. I've just kind of noticed that all of them. Yeah. Okay, so this one's kind of the big out of all of these. Is that there is one big element from the comic that is again I'm trying to as much as I can without spoiling. This is a huge thing I could spoil. There's one big element from the comic, Old Man Logan, that is cleverly twisted in this film. They adapted it and they twisted it, so it's not the exact same thing, but the same event occurs, and it's referenced, but we do not visually see it. And I would have liked to visually see what it's mentioned in this film. They mentioned and hinted at it's a big thing in this film, but it's we don't see it, and we don't allude to it visually. You know, I think we needed to see it visually. It may have been an issue of money or time. That's what I'm thinking. But it's like kind of so big a thing that you would think we would have seen that. A lot of people think it might have been too depressing if we saw it, and the films are depressing enough in a good way.
It really is. It really
So
is.
people, I guess maybe that was the rationale why they didn't need it, but still, it's talked about. So again, it sounds like a gripe. It's a nitpick. It's what it is, but still, it would have been really. It's a really big event from the book. Anyway.
Okay. All right. So final thoughts. I guess I'll start. I mean, like I said, man, this movie is essentially just like an indie western with some minor sci-fi elements in it.
Western is the perfect word for it.
Yeah. Uh like like I said, like minor sci-fi elements. It's like you could walk into this and not be a fan of sci-fi at all and still be like, "Oh, okay, he's got like these claws that, you know, like they're not working right." And you know what I mean? It's like you can pick up on it very quickly even if you're not a fan of the franchise. And right, like I said, I'm not the biggest Hugh Jackman Wolverine guy. I'm really not. I would even go as far to say there have been certain points in the franchise where I think he's kind of overshadowed some people. You know, I mean, of course, like maybe X3 being the big example, but having said that, this movie just did such a fantastic job of, you know, just having to send off to the character someone who we've literally spent like close to 20 years getting to know on the big screen. That's a crazy thought, isn't it, Dragon? That makes me feel so old. But it's also just like a terrific standalone movie in its own right that I truly think is the next incarnation of the Dark Knight in terms of just like something that tells just such a terrific, rock solid story and has an unbelievable amount of tone and amount of grit to it. And like you said, all the violence is just it's totally justified. It's cathartic, but it's justified at the same time, and it's also very brutal. So it kind of loses some of the catharticism in it a little bit. And yeah, I mean, just give Hugh Jackman an Oscar. I'm not expecting to see Patrick Stewart nominated, but I mean, I think his performance totally deserves to be nominated for Best Supporting Actor. You know, just I would be over the moon to see this Best Picture. It's an early contender for it's an early contender for one of my top 10 spots of the year. I mean, that's for sure. Uh, it's just a fantastic experience all around. Just the fastest 2 hours and 20 minutes I have ever spent in a theater. All right.
Okay, well, I have a interesting comparison really hit me after I saw the film. I like that on kind of my final thoughts here. Like, lumping in my final thoughts mainly is that, of course, Deadpool's a film I love very much. So, as apparent by last year, and various times we talked last year. Deadpool and Logan wonderfully parallel each other.
Oh, they really do, don't they?
They do, as they've always have in a way, but it's so poetic in a way. No, but looking at the films, looking at Deadpool and Logan, they wonderfully parallel each other in that they're R-rated, faithful, and true to character. Both are fascinating takes on comic book films as a whole. When you think of it, on how do you bring a comic book to screen, Deadpool does this through kind of the meta comedic view. Now, what Logan does, interesting, of course, through the comic thing we do have, the idea of the comic, seeing the X-Men comic books.
Right.
Logan, through the movie, through a serious introspective view, is basically the serious introspective view on adventures, on adventures being kind of these fantastic, but I'm just trying to find the right words here. So, basically, Logan's kind of Deadpool's kind of the meta comedic view on this. Logan is kind of the serious introspective view on things, saying, "Hey, comics are like these adventurous, fantastic
Comics
things.
are like kind of the new Greek mythology in a way. Is that what you're trying to say?
It's kind of it's kind of like that. It's saying that eventually these are fanciful things, but we're actually going like a really painful journey right now. It's saying it's kind of showing you. Logan shows like what real life would be like. It's like the comics are like kind of the fantasy kind of tellings of like these real gritty adventures.
Exactly.
And as gritty and all the gritty, violent, kind of gruff and scary real world we live in, the message of the film and what it's getting at is like these inspiring little adventures told in the comic books of these realistic tales shows you that again it's told through Logan that hey, there is a light quality trapped and buried deep in that gruff, scary real world. So there is that inspiring quality of comic books is buried in this very realistic take.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's a subtler take on the comic book movies, really introspective looking comic books where you have like, I'm going to give you everything you want from comics. I'm bring it to the screen with Deadpool, and here I'm going to show. I'm basically going to show you what the real world is and how we look to comic books to kind of show you the light that's in the scary world, in the scary times we live in.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
So again, both really excellent films, and Logan again, they're both really kind of reshaping the book and how you make these things now. And it's amazing.
Okay. All right, folks. Well, we will definitely be diving into a spoiler cast on this movie because there's a ton of stuff to get into, but we'll be doing that hopefully sometime next week. Fingers crossed. And in the meantime, stay tuned for more. And yeah, for God's sakes, Academy, just give Hugh Jackman the Oscar. I mean, someone needs to just call Casey Affleck, right? They just need to call Casey Affleck and be like, Casey, look, we love you, man. We love you, but just give Hugh Jackman the Oscar. Just do it. Just do it. And Patrick Stewart deserves one too.